Hey, this is the World Advice Channel 2. What I want to talk about today is a topic of, can racial harmony truly exist? Like the idea that different races of people, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, and so on and so forth, can actually live together in this world together and get along, for that matter, okay? Not just on an international level, but even on a domestic level, like living in the same nations and actually get along and not have the issues that we have seen have happened for some time, in recent history, okay? And when it comes to, of course, answering that question, of course, if you know me and follow my content, I can definitely say with absolute certainty, yes, I definitely believe racial harmony can actually exist. Okay, and the reason why believe racial harmony can actually exist, like actually live in a society without racism, and of course the racial tensions, all the hype about like you know black and white people are going to go to war and fight against each other, and all that type of stuff, and people saying behind their backs that they don't really like this group of people, yet a lot of their friends are from that group of people, and all that type of stuff, and all that type of shit we're all too familiar with if you live in North America, especially America, of course, no surprise to literally anybody for that matter who uses their head, and let alone knows what's going on in their world for that matter. The truth of the matter is, the first reason why I believe it's possible, out of the two main reasons why I believe it's possible, is that racial harmony historically has actually already, when you look at the history books, has already existed. Because the truth of the matter is, before the age of exploration with Christopher Columbus, and even before Islam, which, not to sound like another generic Islamophobe, because just in general, and I'm a person who's not a big fan of religion, I have to keep it real. Islam did ruin a lot of things, okay, and did cause a lot of problems, okay. But like I said, I'm not prejudiced against Islam because I hate all religions. I'm agnostic anyway, so that's my worldview anyway, for that matter. But I do have to admit, okay, without being more biased towards Islam than other religions, Islam did ruin a lot of shit, okay? And it did have a belief system that kind of introduced, racism as we know it today, at least a prototype for it that was going to be later adopted by, of course, white Europeans when they started colonizing the rest of the world, and of course came across Muslim nations. Okay, but of course, before Islam existed, going back in time, like I was saying before, of course, Christianity, with the age of exploration, type of Christianity after Christopher Columbus traveled to a new part of the world, and of course, before that, Islam. There was a time period before those two things happen, explore, Christopher Columbus and Islam, to sum it up, where people actually did get along fairly well regardless of their race, okay? Because the truth of the matter is, there's many examples of this. Even though there's been this whole alt-right propaganda from losers like Metatron and a bunch of other people who have just recently infiltrated the internet and don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and have made one of the biggest mistakes you are not supposed to make when you're talking about things like history, which is judging you things from your perspective, a modern day perspective, instead of a more logical perspective from what the information has provided. The truth of the matter is, once you get past those idiots and straight up losers, for that matter, the annoying alt right pipeline, we actually see much evidence throughout human history that people of different races actually live in societies and got along. Whether it could be ancient Egypt, there were definitely different races that existed there. Whether it could be another example, I could be I could mention even Mesopotamia, what's made up of places like Babylon, Assyria, and different places. It was actually quite normal for people to go there of different races to trade and sometimes even live there, let alone have foreign princes. Like obviously, you have the story of King Solomon who married women of different races, and let's not forget Rome, believe it or not, who actually, of course, has citizens of all different races living in their nation, not just simply put it, just simply people of the same main race. So the truth of the matter is, if you look at reality, common sense would indicate that if you already have something that's been done before, you can do it again, okay? Because the truth of the matter is, racism as we know it today, even though, let's be honest, it always existed, it was never as bad as it is now. And truth be told, when you look at the history of the world, people of different cultures, even when they're fighting against people of different races, would always pay respect to the people and would always acknowledge the accomplishments of the other group of people they're fighting against. Okay, while people like Christopher Columbus, post Christopher Columbus era, were a different story and developed the theory of racism that it became what we know as it is today, to put it bluntly. Okay, so you have to realize there's a different form of racism, and different form of racism, and because racism as we know it is not the same as it was thousands of years ago before Christopher Columbus traveled the world, to put it bluntly. Okay, so that's one thing I can definitely say for certain. Okay, to put it bluntly. Okay, to be quite honest with you. Okay, not to mention, from what the evidence has also shown, people got along actually quite well in intermarriage. While there might have been some issues with it with some people, mostly people got along. To sum up what I'm trying to say is that people already did in the past and didn't have any problems like we had today. And that's the truth of the matter. So we have to realize we can't look at things from a face value perspective. We have to look at it from an actual historical perspective. And historical evidence has shown people of different races got along quite well, for that matter, throughout human history. Okay, it's only until, of course, you know, um, no surprise to literally anyone, Christopher Columbus's men, and of course the European nations afterwards that helped introduce racism as we know it and Islam before helped some Muslims, not all Muslims, helped set the precedent for racism as we know it as well. So the truth of the matter is that's the first point I want to make across. If people did it before, people can do it again. As the saying goes, if you did something once, then you can do it again. And that's the truth of the matter when it comes to getting along. So that's my first point. The second reason why I believe racial harmony can actually exist is simply down to the fact that what exactly is there need for hating people of different races anymore? Like, this is the thing I always ask, like, or I should say, I would ask people who always say, people can never get along of different races, can never truly live in harmony with each other. This is a question I want to fucking ask them. Aside from the obvious question of, like, wouldn't it be kind of problematic living in a world where people of the same race only live in their own nation of origin? Because what would happen if it just so happens somebody moves to one place or another place and they happen to live among the locals and have children? Are we just going to disown them? Wouldn't that cause problems? But anyway, aside from the fact that these people clearly do not use their fucking head at all because they're fucking dumb, another question, main point I want to make across here, if anything, is simply down to the fact that what is the point in hating people of different race? Because even when you look at history books, when people hated people of different races, specifically the Christopher Columbus, post Christopher Columbus era, after he came to the New World and discovered it and helped create no colonies and stuff. Yeah. You already know the story, okay? The truth is, when it comes to Christopher Columbus, to put it bluntly, and the racism that came afterwards, racism back then was just something that was created to justify the things that they believed needed to be done to help guarantee European survival, because it was a way to kind of dehumanize people so they could get something from them, like resources, manpower, you know, in other words, labor, and not just that, of course, even just land to grow more food. It serves as a justification for the evil things that they did to foreign groups of people, okay? But in the modern world, like, we live in a world where people anyway can just walk across the street and get more than enough food than they want, for that matter, okay? So in other words, to sum up what I'm saying, life is more comfortable than it's ever been. We have more food than we've ever had in human history. We have more resources, you know, than we've ever had in human history, with better extraction methods and even better ways to find new places and stuff. So, in other words, we have more than we've ever needed to do. We don't have scarcities like in the past where they had food shortages and stuff like that, okay? So, the truth of the matter, as a result, the idea that you would have to do something evil like they did just for like slavery to gain like a profit and stuff is just simply unfounded and untrue. What's the point of that in the first place anymore? We live in a world that's more developed. Yes, we could still have those things happen, but it's not like in the past where they had it consistently. And there are better ways to prevent that from happening, like having food grown indoors and so on and so forth. And that's the truth of the matter. So to put it bluntly, this whole idea that racism needs to exist, is always going to exist, or I should say we can have racial harmony, is just so stupid. Whether it could be the fact that racial harmony has never existed or the fact that there's a justification to justify racial hatred is simply unfounded and untrue, especially in the modern world. So in short, I'm just going to be quite blunt and honest with you. The idea that we can actually get along with each other and have racial harmony is something that's very real and it's very true. So in short, yes, we can definitely have racial harmony, and that is the honest truth of the matter. So anyway, this is all I have to say, and I hope you learned something from this video and enjoyed it, and that is it. And simply put, I'm out. So bye.